It's super hard when like the dinner's like burning on the stove, your kid's late for soccer practice, and like the repairman's at the door, and your wife's like, "Why haven't you done everything?" And it's like this is not the time for 30 questions about why you punched your brother in the face. But like I get that. But Lorena Seidel, this parenting coach I interviewed, she's like, David, never waste a crisis. Any conflict is a time where what they thought was a good idea is confronted with the reality it was not a good idea. So that is a time for them to learn how to think differently. It's not like later when they remember that. It's like that's a crisis that could be a chance for them to learn to think differently. And you're never going to get them there, she argues, unless you're genuinely curious about why they thought it made sense to them in that moment.
Hey.
A few years ago, I read an awesome book called The Upside of Stress, Dr. Kelly McGonigal, and it came across a story where she said there's this really sharp psychologist at the University of Austin who used to be a former middle school English teacher and was fascinated with psychology and became obsessed with mindset and mindset intervention and stress. And he ventured into one of the lowest income high schools in San Francisco at the time. And so this school is riddled with gangs and low board scores, you name it, whatever, everything that befalls low performing schools. And with one 30-minute intervention, mindset intervention with a test group, followed them through the year. That test group compared to the control group had the GPA was like way higher, a point higher. They missed less day of school. They had less anxiety, less depression, like across the board, their performance and their attitude was like sky high. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. And reading more about this is a repeatable thing. And so I'm like, I got to meet this guy. I have to meet this guy because this is like, it's almost like magic. And that's what Dr. Yeager said. He said, yeah, people think it's like hullabaloo magic, but it works. And so I reached out to him, cold called him and cold emailed him and said, hey, I used to play basketball a long time ago. But I read about you. I just want to meet you. And luckily, David knows basketball and knew who I was. So I wasn't some crazy stalker. And we started Zooming and becoming friends. And I've been a huge proponent of his work. And David's at the University of Texas in Austin. And he's got a lot of stuff going on. He leads the National Study of Learning Mindset. He collaborates with Angela Duckworth and Carol Dweck, the Grit Mafia. He's just written a book, which I highly recommend everyone pick up today. Pub and you, David. Here we go. It's called 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People. It's a groundbreaking approach to leading the next generation and making your own life easier. And so in my corporate speaking world, number one question I get is, how do I deal with Gen Zers and millennials? How do I deal with them? They're aliens. And so today, what I hope our goal is for our group, because David, we talk about fatherhood a lot and the things that we talk about, what we learn from our parents, and obviously you shaped us so much. We want to hear your secret sauce. So how can we reach our 10-year-old hormonal darlings? How can we reach our Gen Z coworkers and colleagues and utilize this amazing magic, the science, the psychology to become better leaders, fathers, people in the world? And so that's why we're super excited to have you on Glue Guys today.
Yeah, I mean, I normally ignore NBA players when they email me.
Creepy ex-NBAers that are just like cold calling you.
Jane's first email was like, I bet NBA players email all the time. Like, no, Shane Battier, like main person I watched in high school and college basketball. Like, no one emailed. What were you talking about? But and Shane, you gave me one of the best leads in my book, which was Chip England, who I write about, and totally inspired me and really changed my thinking and completed the book. I could not have finished it if not for that coaching story.
Can we just jump into the Chip England thing right away since you brought it up? Because the book's awesome. I'm like halfway done, but the Chip England thing is like fascinating to me. Like, what is it that makes this guy so special? Like, what is the secret sauce?
Let me explain who Chip is, first of all. So like Chip England with all respect to Coach K and all the great coaches I play for, I would not be here today. I would not have the career that I had without learning from, I think, the greatest shooting coach in the NBA now and maybe ever, fellow Duke grad, Chip England, who scored 1,000 points at Duke, had a great basketball career in the Philippines in the World Basketball Association. And the story was, after my freshman year, I think I was like 4 for 30 from the three-point line my freshman year. Okay, I was a pretty good shooter, but like I just couldn't make a shot my freshman year. I was a bad shooter. Okay, and most people don't remember that because I was like a power forward. And so that summer, Chip came around in the gym when I was working out, and he said, "Hey Shane, like I think I can help you. Your jump shot's good. It's not going to make it in the NBA. You have some technical deficiencies that." You have great touch. I think you can be a great shooter, but we need to work on some things. And so I'll be here at the gym tomorrow morning at 8:00. And if you want to work, I'll work. And he said this to a teammate of mine, gave him the same speech, like your jump shot's good. It could be better. I'll be here at 8:00. I showed up. My teammate did not. And here I am, a glue guy. And so the rest is history. So literally like that, there was an inflection point in my entire career. And I worked with Chip for many, many years after that. He changed my shot twice, actually, in the course of my NBA career.
He went on to be like the Spurs secret sauce, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, he works for the Oklahoma City Thunder now, but he is like the guru, the guru, and like just but more than a shooting coach, he's like my basketball psychologist. And so, talking to David for this book, I said you got to talk to Chip because like he is like exactly the person that you're trying to define in terms of a mentor mindset. So that's the backstory, Dave. I'll let you take it from.
Yeah, and that this concept of mentor mindset I'll get to is the idea of a leadership style in which you have very high standards but very high support. So you're not on the one hand an authoritarian dictator, which I call the enforcer, where you're not Bobby Knight choking people, throwing chairs at them. And then on the other side, you're not a protector. You're not just overly nice and fuzzy with no standards, because obviously you can't be an elite performer if that's what's happening. And so the hypothesis, after observing lots of great leaders, is that the great leaders do the combination of both. And that really matters, especially for young people who are in like a vulnerable position where they're not quite certain if they belong. Are they, in Shane's case, are my skills going to translate to the next level? So there's a bit of like status precariousness that a lot of people experience. And a mentor mindset leader is awesome when you're in that circumstance, because they're basically saying you can meet this next level, the thing that you want to achieve, but you're going to need to change a lot, but I'm going to walk the journey with you. I'm not going to just show up, tell you all your flaws and walk away and then let you do it on your own. Because, Chip had to also show up at 8 a.m. unpaid to meet with Shane the next morning. And so I spent years following great teachers, mentors, parents, managers at Microsoft. The best grocery store manager that I've ever seen, who I'd love to talk about. And I had all those stories, and then I described this mentor mindset idea to Shane, and he was like, you got to talk to Chip. So I'd met Chip. I texted him, and I thought, look, the guy's a big deal. He's the Spurs one-man Moneyball strategy, right? They could draft players in the late teens or 20s, and they often did because they were often winning, so they didn't have top draft picks. And they would have notable flaws in their shots, but be great defenders and great team players and a bunch of other intangibles. And then Chip would fix their shots. And then that's like Tony Parker's now, a Hall of Famer. And this, I love the story. Bill Barnwell, I think, wrote about this first, that Popovich used to say that's a turnover every time Tony Parker would shoot. And now he's a legend. And Kawhi Leonard used to fling the ball kind of over his shoulder when he shot. And if someone said, oh, who's the best mechanics coach ever? The stereotype would be they would look at all the stuff you're doing and break you down. They'd be like, fundamentally, all these things are wrong. We're going to break you down and build you up in my mental image of a perfect, in golf, perfect swing or perfect throwing mechanics or a perfect shot, right? But that's not Chip's thing. That's just like Shane said, he didn't start with your shot is garbage and you need to get rid of it all. And if only you listen to me, and then I've master architect your shot, then you would be great, right? But I coached I coach youth baseball. I'm not saying I'm any good, but this is what I see all the time. Parents are like, your swing's terrible or your throw's terrible. I'm going to build it up from scratch. So that's people's instinct. And I met Chip. I texted him and he's like, you got to come to my favorite restaurant. And I thought, big, intimidating, legendary NBA coach is going to take me to the fanciest restaurant. Lived in San Antonio. And we met at a strip mall, like on the side of the freeway, Mexican food place, like not a good Mexican food place. The kind of place that serves tacos in a hard shell, which is like illegal in Austin. Like you better have some gourmet tacos in Austin. And you cannot serve these kind of tacos. You'd be kicked out. And Chip's like, you know why I love this place? I was like, and I just met him like 9 seconds earlier. And he's like, because it has the best claw machine in all of San Antonio. And I had brought my daughter and he was going to coach her on how to use the claw machine to get a stuffed animal. He's like, a lot of them are flimsy. They're not good. But this one, it's hard, but there's a skill to it. And so I watched him put like $20 for like my 12-year-old daughter and my like 6-year-old son to learn how to use the claw machine. And he was just so much more patient with them than I was with my own children. And like, I just tell the story because it's a very revealing thing. He's not trying to be the like intimidating, super expert, better than you. I know everything. You're a nobody. And like, that was clear throughout the whole interaction. And he later explained to me that he has to spend so much time on trust, which this sounds obvious when I say it out loud, but like it's super important. He spends so much time building trust because a 19-year-old drafted is, you know, they're a millionaire now and everyone's saying you're the best. And there've been people talking about you for months on the pre-draft. And like, you think of your shot as what got you drafted. And all of a sudden this guy's going to tell you to change it. And if you don't trust that he's got your best interest at heart, if you don't trust certainly that he knows what he's talking about, but especially that he's not going to leave you alone in a lurch with a bad shot as an incomplete project. If you don't trust that, then you're not willing to revisit the very thing that got you drafted. And so there's a lot more to it, but I think that he's got super high standards. You know, he's looking at, is the ball releasing off this finger or that finger? It's like, are your hands spread widely enough so that way you're controlling the ball all the way through the shot? And like, this is my amateur version, Shane. I'm sure you could say it more expert, but like, he's certainly attention to detail, but mainly like the relationship that he has is about you trusting that critical feedback is there for you. And then the last thing I did that just blew me away is he's like, I'm trying to give you a coach in the head. A lot of experts, and I see this, I take my kids like to private hitting coaches because I'm trying to learn how to be a private hitting coach. Just I do it for free for kids in my neighborhood. And so I spend my evenings is giving free lessons. Anyway, so I see a lot of other coaches because I'm borrowing their ideas and they're very generous. But some of them feel like they have to make it seem like the kid can only get better in that 1 hour because that's kind of the business model. Is like, you have to bring your kid to me for me to say the secret sauce to your kid in that hour, and then they'll be good. But Chip's like, if you work with me 1 hour, you've got 23 hours in the day you need to be getting better, and then 6 other days in the week. So he wants to coach in your head for the whole time. And this is how he runs his youth basketball camps. The first week of his 2-week camp, the coaches are coaching, they're running the drills. But the second week, the players run the drills. And they're coaching each other. And it's because the other 50 weeks of the year, he wants the kids to be coaching themselves in the head. I think that it encapsulates a lot of leadership qualities. And he contradicts a lot of the insecurities that I think poor leaders have, where they feel like they need to be the dominant expert and the only source of expertise. Chip's all about relationships, challenge, and then transferring responsibility to you so that you can be a coach in your head for the rest of your career.
We always talk about agency on this podcast, Ravi, and he really gave me agency of my game. And it was I was always in ownership, but I looked at Chip as kind of like my co-pilot on this journey. And I hired him. As a rookie in the NBA, you don't get much personal development. You have all these coaches, but like there's really no one like watching every one of your games, every one of your matchups, and giving you feedback daily. Okay, the coach may pick out a good play or a bad play on film and either cuss you out or praise you, and they move on, right, Alex? But like you know, the quarterback's coach might be different. He's obviously watching every one of your snaps, but So I hired Chip to watch every single one of my plays because I played for the Memphis Grizzlies. We won 23 games. We were horrible, so I wasn't getting like any attention or better from the coaching. And he would set like these goals for me that I wasn't getting from my own pro team at the time. He's like, "Look, you should average 16 points a game as a rookie. All right, you're going to play that. You're going to play that much. But instead of saying like, I got to average 16 points, I want you to break it up by quarters. And your only goal should be get to the foul line twice and make one basket. Okay. And you're going to have the ball in your hand. So like if you're struggling with your jump shot, all right, get to the line 4 times a quarter. Okay. And if you can just get to the line and shoot a percentage 2 times a quarter and, make one basket a quarter, like you're going to get there. And I'm like, yeah, it's not that hard. Like I can do that. I can make a basket a quarter. I'm playing 40 minutes a night. And, Chip had the amazing ability to break down like really big things. Here I am, a rookie in the NBA, into very simple bite-sized things. And the confidence I got from that was everything. And even though I played for a bad team and I was, over my head most nights against veterans, just having those simple goals that I felt were like I owned and were attainable, they were everything for me as a 23-year-old rookie.
By the way, Ravi, just to establish, all you needed was a Chip England, and you could have been somebody. I'm just saying, you could have been somebody.
By the way, honestly, I that's the same take. I think the podcast is over. I think we've sort of arrived at the conclusion, which is just had I had Chip, I'd have been, the 2-time player of the year and a 2-time NBA champion. But that's fine.
The second most. He might have been the second most winning. College.
Yeah, I had a little more drive than Shane. I probably would have ended up number 1. But go ahead. I got to ask David my question when you're done, Alex.
No, I was just going to ask. So does not every team have a shooting coach? Like, is this abnormal again to go to like the Spurs in Oklahoma City? I guess I was under the assumption like.
Now it's a cottage industry.
They probably do.
Right? Not every player has a shooting coach. All right. Like when I played, like, it was rare to have an outside coach. Now everybody's got a guy.
I mean, go look player by player on the Thunder the last 2 years. It is unbelievable. Free throw percentages are up like 15, 20 points. Shai is now a superstar, right? And that's like 2 or 3 years under Chip. It's like there are very few treatments that I study in social science where it works like 90% of the time. And you can look at almost any player that he's been coached by. And so there has to be some unique value add that he's doing. And it's amazing that he's still able to do that much better than other coaches in an era where every single shot is tracked. I mean, you can like recreate a person's biomechanics in a computer for every play in the game now with the trackers. And even with all that potential feedback, there's still something special about the relationships he does, the way he gets you to own it. Yeah, it's amazing.
Is it different? Because I feel like I've talked to these guys about the NFL level. There is no culture. There's not like a growth culture. Like once you're drafted, you're kind of a little bit of a finished product is kind of the mindset for the vast majority of teams.
Is that the approach?
And yeah, I mean, listen, you've been like, the idea that you were going to change a quarterback's throwing motion or like change the way a receiver runs or gets in and out of a break or like, don't get me wrong, they want to coach and it's more of like coaching their system. And I think there's support around a player like acclimatizing, if that makes sense. Like, oh, okay, get some reps so that you can get used to the speed. But there is no philosophy around like, I'm going to make you a more accurate quarterback, right? Or help you become, I guess, obviously to use more of a, mentorship mindset, word choice. But like, that just doesn't exist in the NFL. It's a little bit like, I've told these guys this, like you're a finished product. And if you can't do it, we'll get somebody else in here that can. And I think that's kind of the philosophy. And I think negatively, right? Like, I think a lot of players don't get developed or their talent or potential never gets seen. So I don't know. Is that rare though? I mean, in the NBA, you're drafting younger guys. Like some of these guys are 18, 19 years old. They've only played, pretty fresh out of high school.
Yeah, like there's a natural growth that's kind of expected. That's why you draft 18-year-olds, because just like naturally, if you give them reps, they're going to get more confident and they're going to get better. Eric Spoelstra is as good as anybody, developing young players. And people are like, well, what's he do? And I wouldn't say it's like, hey, he walks through guys and their trajectory and sets goals for them. He plays them. Right? He throws them out there. And sometimes it's because of injuries, but a lot of times it's like, all right, like we need somebody to go out there and do it. And it may be, a 6'5" guy playing power forward. It might be someone who's a wing playing point guard. And Spoelstra has the trust. And when you have coaches that trust you in pressure situations, and you're not coming out if you make a mistake, which you're going to make mistakes. It does a lot for you, man. You develop much quicker.
David, what's the accountability metric for people that do it really well? Like, so take the example of you have somebody who's into it. They want to do a great job. They want to be held to the standard. Great. What happens in something when the student is not up to this? They're not doing the work necessary to reach the standards that the mentor has. What does a great mentor do in that world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like a mentor mindset teacher, for instance, they've got super clear consequences, but if they're not vindictive, it's usually they've set a real standard, and the consequences, you just didn't meet that standard. So to give you an example, Uri Treisman is America's greatest freshman calculus professor. And I sat in his class after I got tenure for 2 years. And it's unbelievable. He does a lot of weird stuff that I write about in the book and a lot of inspiring stuff. But one small detail is he gives the same exams as the Harvard freshman calculus class. So if a student at University of Texas at Austin gets a 68, they're like, oh my God, I'm failing, or why is my teacher giving us something that's impossible? It's too hard for us. Then Uri will be like, yeah, but the Harvard guy's got a 66. And so those are the people you're going to compete for jobs with. And so that's not that bad. And so he makes it about preparing you to be a leader in your field. And he says, when you're leaders in your field, like almost every single class period. And but the standard is like actual real contribution, like changing the frontiers of science, being a great computer scientist. So it's like students do sometimes fail to meet that standard. But that's because often they're either underprepared or life happened or disability. And there's always a handful of students. But it's not like a punishment. It's more like I set a real standard that would be awesome if you met it. And I was trying to support you to do it. And maybe I didn't support you enough. Maybe you didn't want it enough. And then it's like the natural consequence of not succeeding.
Yeah. But the one thing that we have to agree on is the standard wasn't met, right? Because it was so clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's totally clear about that. Like he's not, the protector mindset is I hide the standard from you because I never want you to feel bad. The mentor mindset's like, no, it's super high, really hard. Not everybody meets it. If you're willing to try for it, here's what I think it's going to take. And here's how I'm going to support you. And then if you don't meet it, then we'll assess, okay, where did it go wrong? It's like a start of troubleshooting.
Yeah, it's so good.
To go back to the stress, when we first started the stress conversation, it hit so home for me, like taking the field as a football player, like the stress is very real, right? Like these big human beings are coming to get you. So it's a little bit like, it's a little instinctual, right? Like the fight or flight, like I got the ball, especially as a quarterback, and they are coming to get you. And it's so funny when you talk about like your approach, I loved how you even talked about like the harnessing your stress, because like for me, there is no really gray. Like when I'm in that situation, and I've told these guys, like the best of times when I have harnessed it, it's really taken me to like a flow state, right? Like time slows down. I see the tiniest of little things so vivid in my mind, right? Like, oh, the safety took this step here. I saw the cornerback turn his hips. And like, it is just it's a surreal feeling to be in that, right? Like I feel like a superpower. And at the same time, like when I felt like it was too much for me, right? And I felt unprepared and the stress overtook me. It was too much. Like then I became a frenzy and I would get out there and it's like, I couldn't see anything. And if things were moving 1,000 miles an hour and I was like distracted and like, it was a mess. And a little bit of it, I again had this negative approach to the stressor, right? Like, oh my God, I'm not prepared. This is going to be too much. Like my worry too, then just like magnified it. And it was chaos. And it was like, it's like one or the other. There was no in between for me. And I like fascinating. I've never heard anybody talk about like, well, it's just your approach to the stress, right? That may have the biggest output on which direction you go.
Yeah. And I'm curious, there's a follow on, which is if you watch any major sports game, the announcers often talk about the quarterback who steps on the field with like ice, water in his veins, like, and that's the ideal, is the person who, hits the free throw with, like they don't care. And so if internally you are in the latter threat type state where you see threats everywhere and you feel unprepared for them and you don't know which one to pay attention to because they're all threatening, then you're also aware that you're the kind of person who's not ice water in the veins. And does this mean I don't have it? And in a league where you're gone like that, I mean, I can't believe how quickly they give up on quarterbacks these days. It's unbelievable. Or any player. It's just like, you're cut, you're gone. You're like, you were the best in the world for 4 years in college. And all of a sudden you're a nobody, like after game 4 in the NFL. But that's every year. It's like that. And it's got to be going through people's minds. If I was Joe Montana or Steve Young or whatever, then I wouldn't be feeling this way. So the fact that I'm feeling this way means I'm even more stressed.
But what comes first, I guess, right? Like, it's easy to say, like, once you've had success, then you feel confident, right? Like, but like you're almost saying it's different, right? Like your approach coming in to the stress and getting in this whole like attitude change of getting to the point where like you're embracing it, right? Can get you to the point where then you are dialed in, and then you have your best chance of having success, and therefore it becomes this like cyclical thing.
Our big innovation in our Nature paper from 2022, where it reported on this stuff, is that there are 2 different kinds of thoughts that happen in sequence. One is the stressful experience or event, like the demand I'm facing. How do I think about that? Do I have the resources to do it? Am I prepared? Is it more than I can do? And the best thing to think there is that a challenge is an exciting opportunity to show what I've done. It might be an opportunity to learn where else I need to grow and what I need to fix. But it's like, this is a chance for me to perform at the level of my preparation. So I'm approaching this difficult challenge, and I'd be bored if it wasn't hard. I want a hard challenge. But then your heart starts racing, and you might want to puke, and your palms are sweaty and all those other things. And you might say, yeah, this is a good challenge, but if I was really prepared, my body wouldn't be doing this stuff. So the second thing you have to do is to name the bodily response as a resource that will actually help you to meet the demand. So if you think of the demand is here and resources here, resources could be like your prior skill, your coaching or whatever, but it's also your in the moment bodily responses. So you want to think of those as resources to help you have as much resource as demand. And I'll just tell an anecdote I tell in the book, but it's a time when my daughter had cello recitals for first chair. And don't ask me what that means. I don't know what it means. But it was important to her when she got in the car in 7th grade. Like, Daddy, I have butterflies on my stomach. I have this like tryout, and I'm so nervous. I don't want to do it. And if I was a protector parent, then I'd be like, I'm calling the school and telling them you're sick and you're not going. And the enforcer parent is suck it up, stop being a wimp, right? And I'm tempted to do both of those things. So for enforcer and protector parents out there, I get it. Like, I'm with you. But the mentor is like, I'm going to make you do this hard thing, but I'm going to help you have the resources to meet it. And I knew that I could get her to rethink that stress physiology as a resource. So, and I was also writing this book, and for her as a 7th grade girl, she would love nothing more to point out that I was a hypocrite. So I also had to like do mental mindset to her. And so I was like, well, Scarlett, do you know what I'm going to say to you? And she's like, yeah, you're going to say that butterflies on my stomach mean I'm doing something important that matters to me, something that's hard, might be impressive, and that my heart racing is getting blood, to my brain and my muscles, and I'm going to perform to the level of my muscle memory because of that. And I was like, Scarlett, that's the best answer I've ever heard in my life. And how did you know I was going to say that? And 2 years earlier, we were in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. It's like north of Chicago in a lake. And I was holding her skis.
I'm from the Midwest. Shane's from Miami. He doesn't know about that, but I know exactly where Lake Geneva is.
Yeah. It's the home of Spotted Cow, which is the Wisconsin beer you can't get anywhere else. And she was about to Uncle Luke had the boat, was about to rev it and pull her out. And she's 5th grade at the time, weighs 60 pounds. And I was like, she's like, said the same thing. I have butterflies on my stomach. I'm so nervous. I can't do this. And I was like, Scarlett, that is you're excited about something fun. Like, not everyone can ski, and it's a little dangerous, a little scary. But the fact that it's scary is going to mean it's going to be even more fun when it goes well. And your heart is getting oxygenated blood to your muscles so you can hold on to the rope. And that's going to make you strong enough to pop up. And because you don't weigh very much, all you have to do is hold on, and you're going to ski and have the time of your life. And she immediately popped up. Uncle Luke hit it, and she skied for like 30 minutes, didn't fall, and I just waited there bobbing in the water, kind of bored, but like proud that like I'd finally said something to my kids that worked. And she remembered that 2 years later. And I say that because there was a moment where she had the stress physiology but didn't know what to name it. And that's the big point here, is it could have gone either way, like up or down, threat or challenge. And I needed her to know in the moment that this stress physiology is a resource. And furthermore, once she was able to use it and it helped her meet her goals, then it's unforgettable. And so I think that's the chicken and egg answer, Alex, is like they need to be about on the precipice of doing something that's really terrifying, could go either way, know that they can harness that resource and do well. And then that experience becomes like a metaphor for them for future experiences in life.
I love that. For you guys, I haven't told you guys this story. So when I first got into the NFL, David, the rule for footballs, and as a quarterback, like your entire life, like in high school, I had one football like every year, and it was my football, right? So like during a game, we played with my football, right? And it was like very broken in. It was like a great old gym ball. It was like so like squishy and tacky, and it was like beautiful. And I'd have a different one every year. And like even in college, you only played with a few, and I was like very particular about the balls that we had. And then fast forward, I get to the NFL. And my rookie year, the rule my rookie year was the home team provides the balls. Okay. And so for both teams, and the balls stay on your given sideline. So the ball bag for the home team, you would just see they were like these really well broken in balls they'd been practiced with. And then the opponent ones were like fresh out of the box and like inflated to the max. And they were horrible, right? Like the brand new Wilson football it's terrible. And then I would play these cold weather games late in the year. So like I went up to Seattle, vividly had this where like you go to throw and the ball would just slip out of my hand.
Oh my God.
This happened like 6 times my rookie year. Okay. And it became a question about my hand size, right? Like I began to have to answer questions, and it like, I became this like small hands guy. Like it's still, dude, my family still makes this joke. They still make fun of me. This was like the meme on our group family text. Like, you know, the guy with the mini hands and the giant burger, and then they stuck my face on it. And like, this was the joke that I'm like small hands guys. And it became this like huge, David, it became this huge stressor for me because it like was an issue. Like, it had nothing worse than going back to throw a football and boom, it slips out. Like, it is such an uncomfortable feeling. It's a fumble. Like, and so for the rest of my career, I had never dealt with this. My palms would start sweating. Like, you literally said it, and my palms would sweat before the game. And so for them, they're on out. And luckily they changed the rule. Thank you, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, that got this done. They changed the rule. So you got to take your own footballs from there on out. But like, I always had to have a football because I was like, I was worried about the feel. And like my last thing I would do before I would run out on the field is like, I made sure I like felt the football. I always had a ball in my hands, and like I would play catch because I wanted that reassurance. But like, I never flipped it as a strength. It was always like, oh fuck, my palms are sweating. Like, you know, like, and I got to handle the football. And it became this like,
it was important.
Stressor.
It was important to you.
It was
Alex.
important, but I never like flipped it to that place. And I clearly needed to, like your daughter, like take it to that place. But it just struck with me right there. You mentioned it. And it was like this physiological reaction to me. And it just like made it worse. And it's like, I dealt with it the rest of my career. 16 years. My last year, I still dealt with it from like being scarred as a rookie. So anyway, I wish I would have met you a long time ago.
this is amazing because it happens all the time, right? It happens with everyone. And so getting these tools is actually crazy helpful. I wrote down earlier, you said this thing, status precariousness, right? Is like a term. Can you just define that? What is it and why is it so important? Because one of the things when Shane has talked to us about you before we started reading your stuff was so much of it is like the importance of status, particularly for this age group. And obviously we talk about how that it's a real thing you have to overcome even later. But can you just like describe what that is and why it's so important?
So just to provide kind of the root idea, it goes back to how evolutionary anthropologists think about the origins of the human species. So we're, as a roving band of people on the savannah, in Africa, you've got threats all around. You've got other groups that want to kill you, and you've got, animals that want to kill you. There's a lot of stuff you got to deal with. And when you're a baby or a 4-year-old, they keep you around because the parents love you and you're the future of the tribe. And you don't have to like do anything to keep the tribe alive when you're 4 or a baby. But at some point, you can't just sit there like a lump on a log, expecting people to bring you like, a leg of a lion and feed you and protect you. It's like, you got to show that you can do something. You have to bring something to the table. And, adolescence is kind of like the biological alarm clock to start showing that you matter socially and you can bring value, whatever the criteria for status is in that group. And of course, in our evolutionary history, it's like this basic survival stuff. Now, figuring out the criteria for status is super hard because there are a lot of different routes to being viewed as a valuable contributor, and there's a million different subcultures we could belong to. But we tend to think of the onset of puberty as the driver to start learning what makes you socially successful. To do another evolutionary example is my colleague Ron Dahl likes to talk about songbirds, like a robin, and they mate by singing a particular song, and you got to like really kick ass at the song, or else every like female bird ignores you. And so young birds like kind of tweet a little bit, but they don't like obsessively practice the right way to have the mating song. But once puberty starts, they are going nuts. They're just practicing all the time. And then they perfect it, and then they get to mate. And if scientists, well, they cauterize the testes of these poor birds, and if they do that before the timing of puberty starts, they kind of practice a song, but they never really get dedicated to it, and then they die alone. And so it's a way of saying like that a lot of the social learning, the kind of obsessiveness, the intense focus, the desire to have an identity, that stuff is really fundamentally about earning a reputation as someone who has value to something that's important in the group. And I say earning because status isn't really just given necessarily. It's something you have to do something to show that you have value. Power you can just have with money, right? But like prestige is only earned, and prestige is really influential. So it's a long way of saying that, given that from like age 10 on, your status and respect is a life and death situation. And again, in our evolutionary history, if you have no value, they just leave you there, right? Or they get rid of you or whatever. So it is life or death in a lot of ways. Then it really is. It comes to the forefront of your mind when you don't have any reason to have prestige, or you haven't earned any status, and people are questioning whether you deserve respect, whether you should be taken seriously. And so that's the circumstance of status precariousness. And I call that sometimes the adolescent predicament, that you want to be someone that's viewed as socially valuable and important, but you're not treated that way, and you haven't yet earned a good reputation. Now, that's fundamentally the adolescent story. How about in your 30s, 40s, and 50s? Well, what I think is that anytime you switch to a new role or a new setting where there's new rules for what counts as excellence, then you can be thrown back into that adolescent predicament. And what that can do is it makes you be hyper attentive to subtle signs that you're not doing well, or that people are judging you or looking down on you. And I bet, Shane, you went from NBA champ to now data scientist, front office at, And this people who spent their whole lives at MIT doing
cold
data
call
science.
creeper. Don't leave the cold calling creeping out of this.
We talked about last podcast, we talked about transition, and that's a huge part of transition and grieving. We've all been very successful in a former life that we've all had. Now we're all just podcasters trying to get some likes and some subscriptions, right? Follow and like Blue Guys, please. And very, very different metrics and very different sources of fulfillment than we've all had sort of in a former life. And it's real. It's real. We are all, we are all very successful, men, fathers. And, there are times now, we've all talked about it, we all say, well, what the hell are we doing here?
I'm just even thinking about my own 13-year-old. And there is this philosophy, even as I was like, in your book, you talk about like, my first instinct when my son does something stupid is exactly that like, why aren't you using your brain? Right. Like, what's going on here? Right. And I like immediately jumped to this kind of conclusion. And I was like so fascinated by your book and the whole like say no to drugs thing. And but like as an institute, right, when that policy was created back in the 80s, that actually had like the inverse effect. Like drug use actually like I think increased. And it's this buried in it is this like inherently like it's so obvious, right? Like what are you guys doing? And you're really missing this like key component of like they're just motivated by different things, and you're not identifying with their motivations, and or this key component of respect, right? Like giving them the respect to make their own decisions, to be right, like obviously in their quest for status. Like is that am I off base in that thinking? Like it's really made me even, I guess, think about obviously my role as a father.
And look, I didn't write the book because I'm the perfect parent. I wrote the book that I needed to read because I have 4 kids, and I do mediocre stuff as a teacher and as a manager, and so it's all the idea is that we all fall into enforcer and protector at different times for reasons that feel legitimate to us, given our perspective on the situation. And the challenge is to get back into mentor. And one of the hardest things to do, what often prevents us from getting back into mentor, is this cultural belief that I call the neurobiological incompetence model, which is a long way of saying, if we just think young people are idiots. And if that's your starting point, then you're like not curious why your 13-year-old is doing something dumb. It's like they shouldn't have done it. And it's obvious they shouldn't have done it. And so we might say, what were you thinking? But that's not an authentic question. You're not like, oh, explain to me your logic and why it made sense to you to do this. It's like, I'm telling you, you're an idiot.
No, it's insulting.
Yeah. And so that plays into the status and respect thing, because the presumption that they had no thought at all, and that they're fully just totally wrong and illogical, and they see the entire world wrong, and that you, the adult, are the only person who sees the world correctly, and that the only way they can be smart is if they immediately comply with our worldview and beliefs. Like that comes across as disrespectful for kids. And I kind of get it, even though a lot of times kids are doing dumb stuff. And what I found is that the best parents, managers, mentors, they're legitimately curious why a young person has made a mistake, whether it's a moral mistake or just like a carelessness or in their schoolwork. And they ask open-ended questions and wait for an answer. And then they ask a follow-up that actually builds on what the young person said. And that sounds easy. It's super hard when like the dinner's like burning on the stove, your kid's late for soccer practice, and like the repairman's at the door, and your wife's like, why haven't you done everything? And it's like this is not the time for 30 questions about why you punched your brother in the face. But like I get that. But Lorena Seidel, this parenting coach I interviewed, she's like, David, never waste a crisis. Any conflict is a time where what they thought was a good idea is confronted with the reality it was not a good idea. So that is a time for them to learn how to think differently. It's not like later when they remember that. It's like that's a crisis that could be a chance for them to learn to think differently. And you're never going to get them there, she argues, unless you're genuinely curious about why they thought it made sense to them in that moment.
I was going to ask you, like, let's say, you have religion on this mindset, right? And I think I love the language. I really appreciate it. One of the things that's hardest, I think, is the patience, is just sort of like actually being patient enough in there. Cause like we care so much about our kids that when they do something dumb, of course, there's like the neurobiological incompetence theory, but there's also just like you really care and you just like want it to be fixed. Right. And you like care so much about it. But there's so much patience in what you're describing. So how do you teach yourself, if you aspire to have the mentor mindset, to have the patience required to actually execute on it?
First of all, I think that's a profound question. And I think about that a lot. And I did when I was writing the book, because I was like, who's the busy guy who's going to read this and say, yes, I can do this? That was the reader I was worried about as I was writing it. I guess I would say there's two reasons why we're in a hurry. One is we're overscheduled. Like I'm overscheduled. I'm running, like I said, the minute I finish work, I'm often coaching baseball. I'm out talking to kids. I'm in the community. And it's like, my 4-year-old just needs pants on. Like, I don't want to have an argument about it. You have to wear pants. And so that's a version. But, and it's very hard to do mentor mindset stuff when you are racing to something. And so you have to, I think the answer is plan out when you're going to do some of these conversations and be proactive and do them in advance of a crisis, is the answer for the overscheduled part. And that's what I've had to do. The other reason why we're in a hurry, though, is because we're embarrassed that we look like bad parents, bad managers, or bad teachers in front of other people whose opinions we care about. And I just take the parenting example. Anytime our kid does something embarrassing to us in public, it makes us look like the kind of person who doesn't have control over our own home, but can't command respect from our own children. And like, what kind of person is that? And I mean, no one cares about me, but the professional athletes, like, sure, I can imagine you wearing like, former athlete is the world's worst dad, like that could happen. Like if you yelled at your kid in public or whatever. But I think normal people experience that also. Like my son, Jack is like the loudest person on the planet, and he will scream so loud. And like his teacher asked if he was deaf, and we had to get his hearing tested. And the doctor was like, "Oh, no. He's biologically fine. It's just like a character flaw." And so when he asks for a toy in public and yells no, it's like the invisible audience of parents are like, this is the worst parent of all time. And I have been in that situation. And normally what I do is I'm in a hurry to rush him to like the bathroom and let him cry it out. And then we go, but I don't want anyone to witness like that, whatever's happening. And the day after I interviewed the parenting coach, I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to try out this questioning stuff. And so Jack asked for a toy in the middle of a park in like downtown, like a resort area. This is 1 million people out. And I'm like, no, you can't have it. He screams. I'm like, all right, Jack, well, I noticed, you're not getting the toy. Like, how does it making you feel? And then he yells as loud as he can, you're hurting me. And I'm like, well, that's not what I want other strangers to hear. And then I'm like, all right, well, like what else could it be? And he's like, you're the worst father. I'm like, also not what I want them to hear. And it's so bad. And then I asked the second question that Lorena gave me, which was, is that serving your purposes? Like, is thinking that helping your goals? And he was not ready for that question. And he was like, no, it makes me feel bad. And I was like, all right, well then what else could it be? The other reason why I'm saying no to the toy. And he's like, and now he's like in creative thinking mode because that question surprised him. And he's like, oh, well, maybe it's because you don't want me to buy a toy that I'm going to throw away because it's a waste of money. And that's because you care about the family. And also you don't want there to be plastic in the landfill. So you care about the earth. And I was like, well, how would that make you feel? He's like, well, I'd feel like I had a great dad who cared about me and also cared about my future and cared about the earth and was a really good person. I was like, can we just go with that? And he was like, yeah, let's do that. And then I bought him ice cream anyway, because I felt like he deserved something. But like I wrote that in the book, hoping people would try it. And like dozens of people were like, I tried that and it worked and I couldn't believe it. And so that's a moment where I could have been in a rush to get him to the bathroom so I don't look like a bad parent. But I was like, let's just not waste this crisis. And that has helped me.
in a professional setting, all right, we're dealing with metaphorical adolescence at work. I mean, that's like the number one thing, I always get it at Q&A session. How do I deal with Gen Zers, millennials? They don't listen. They just want the corner office, yada, yada, yada. It's the same dynamic, right? And so as managers and leaders, how do we approach those conversations? Any different?
So the details are different, but the philosophy is not. But the details matter, so I'll just explain some of them. At some point, I pulled a Battier and I cold emailed Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and guessed his email. It was and then he replied. And anyway, I was talking to him about how we wanted to create large language models that were fine-tuned and trained on expert mentor mindset leaders. So like imagine that. So Microsoft has like 30,000 managers. Imagine that you could find the 5 to 10% who routinely keep talent in the pipeline. Where if you go off and you recruit the best engineers from Stanford and MIT, you don't lose them to Facebook or Amazon or whatever. They stay in the ranks and like a broad representative group, like a diverse group. You're not just filtering out some people and keeping others. You're keeping all your talent. And if you had the transcripts of their performance evaluations, which are usually hard because you're giving tough critical feedback, and that's a huge time when Gen Z young people are like, what, do you hate me? Why are you criticizing me? Do you think I'm no good? It's a huge pain point, is that managers think I'm helping you get better, and employees think you're trashing me and you're trying to fire me. So if you could find the good transcripts from the best performance evaluation conversations from managers who retain Gen Z employees, wouldn't it be awesome if we could fine-tune large language models and then coach new managers on the right stuff to say? Because maybe managers don't really know how to do this mentor mindset stuff, or they're busy, and they would really benefit from having hints or practice. So that was the idea. And we went through the HR and we found someone who's generally considered one of Microsoft's best managers. Her name is Steph Okamoto. She's been there 17 years. And I just had her walk me through the way she did her performance evaluations and how she had these tough conversations with 22 to 24-year-olds about the quality of their work. And it was never enforcer stuff. It wasn't yelling, telling, blaming, and shaming. But it was also never protector stuff. She was totally honest. And the reason why she got away with it is kind of like the Chip England stuff. She would have them set super high standards for themselves. So, for instance, you're hired for some job responsibilities such as running onboarding for all new managers or employees at Microsoft. She had a 25-year-old doing that. And Steph was like, that's going to be too easy for you. So what's a stretch task you want to add to that responsibility? And then the 25-year-old said, well, I want to create a data dashboard so I actually could track all the progress, but I don't know how to manage programmers. And so Steph was like, all right, let's set that goal. So that way, when you get to your performance evaluation, you will have gone above and beyond 6 months from now, and it'll be super impressive. And then, but Steph didn't like tell her how to manage a team of programmers. Mostly what she did was it was blocking and tackling stuff. So if you're going to borrow engineer time, if you're in HR, you're trying to borrow engineering time, those engineers are going to be like, who are you? Get out of here. Like, we're the high status people here. And like, your project's lame and our engineers are too important. And so Steph would like talk to the other manager and be like, can you just not harass her and let her get some engineering time? I'm summarizing it. She did it better than that. And so she's mostly protecting the employee's right to do something ambitious and hard. And then she did that. It went above and beyond. Her name is Saloni Shah. She's now the chief of staff for HR at Microsoft in her late 20s. So huge promotional velocity, very great success story. But the key thing is, when they met to talk about performance, it was like they're troubleshooting this awesome and ambitious project. It's not like you're not living up to what you're doing. And so when the employee comes in, and this is hard for me, they're not admitting that they can't do their regular job. It's like, it's hard to be an overperformer. And in that context, I need your support and help. And I don't want you to do it for me. I want you to basically allow me to earn the prestige of an overperformer. And I don't think that people complain they want the corner office, but like, don't you want someone super ambitious that's going to like do 150% of their job, like ahead of schedule? And like, that is the employee that I want. So it's like channeling that ambition into a way to earn a great reputation ahead of schedule. And then you are their supporter. And so that's what Steph does. And that's what even the great grocery store manager that I followed for non-college educated 18-year-olds.
What store were they at?
For some reason, I was appointed partially at the business school at the University of Stavanger in Norway. And so I went to go teach a class, a graduate class. And while there, I got involved in a project of the greatest grocery store managers for this network of grocery stores called OBS, OBS. And we found this guy, Ule, who overperforms. So in a small regional grocery store, they have some of the best profits, far better than you'd expect based on demand. And so I interviewed all of his assistant managers, his employees, and all that kind of stuff. And they love the guy. It's universally, they want to work so hard for him. And in the US, if you talk to grocery store owners, and I have interviewed a lot, or managers, all they complain about is the teenagers who want to get high and like take naps in the back and goof off. And they get really good at pretending not to work and like looking busy, but no one actually asks them to do anything. And that's the complaints. And I'm not saying they're wrong. But Ule doesn't have that problem. And when he does, he had this one 18-year-old who learned from an older employee who later left how to not work. And he called her in and like chewed her out. And I interviewed her pretty soon after that. And I was like, were you mad? Were you offended? That's the stereotype of Gen Z, is that you give them honest feedback and then they complain about it, you know? And I was like, did you want to quit? And she's like, no, he cares about me too much to let me be an underperformer. And then he sent her to leadership training to like in 2 years be the shadow of the assistant manager. So she's not even the shadow of the assistant manager yet, but she saw a path and saw as an investment in her. So the chewing out wasn't like, you're not good. It's like, this is my way of helping you to become great. And I'm going to back that up with how I support you. And I'll say Wegmans, the grocery store in the East Coast, is very similar. And they were the number one employer in the country for a long time for a good reason. They're recently overtaken by Google, now Microsoft. But they invest in their non-college educated employees at a very early stage. I think that's really important.
I mean, you guys have football and basketball, and I have grocery. I feel like it's pretty similar. You guys remember when we had Brian Halligan, who's the executive chairman and the co-founder of HubSpot, on, and he's an amazing guy. But he was talking about how he would invite all these people who were high performers to the board meeting, right, so that they could come and just meet the board and also present things. And I think that, just like you said, that currency of, no, not your manager, not the person that's 3 levels above you, you know, that door is open and we're going to have you come do that. And just like what they would get as a result of that practice, super unique. But one thing I wrote down from what David said that I love, we've talked about believing in people more than they believe in themselves when you have high expectations, right? Like, no, you talked about this, Shane, like, I only am tough on you because I believe in you. You can do better. That I care about you too much for you to be an underperformer that's fucking gold. That's so good, right? Like, because you can even flip it.
I say it's a Jack now when he wants to quit baseball practice. But the Sergio Estrada, who's the Ule of El Paso, Texas, is this awesome teacher. He's got this story about a student who asked a hard physics question through this app called Remind. It's like their protected text messaging app. And it's like, I don't get it. I'm crying. I can't do it. I'm not going anywhere. Like, it's just full on psychological catastrophe at 9:00. It is a very low income school. You can see Mexico, out the window. It's on the river border of Mexico. And he's there for like a social purpose. He wants to like inspire and change the lives of these kids. And so the temptation is to say, just don't worry about it, right? Don't do it. Come tomorrow. You'll be fine. Right. Or it's 9:00. I'm trying to watch Netflix. Like, give it a rest. But he didn't do that. He just goes, show me what you have so far and we'll take a look. And then she takes a picture of the problem. He's like, oh, I see that you have this and this. What would happen if you did that? And then he puts the phone down and like starts Bridgerton or whatever he was doing. And then 30 minutes later, the girl comes back and says, oh, I see it now. I can get it. I'm not crying. I'm confident. I'll see you tomorrow. And so like he didn't explain physics to her in the moment. He was there, and she knew that he was there, and it got her unstuck. But she's the one who did the thinking. And I was like, Sergio, how did you resist the urge to help, first generation students? She could have crumbled, anxiety, stress, depression. He was like, he thought it was so weird that I asked him that. And he was like, I would never deprive them of a chance to know that they can understand physics. And that's the version of the Ule thing, because the students know that by the end of the semester, that he cares about them too much to not have them carry physics knowledge with them as they leave. And his students do internships at NASA. They like go on scholarship. They physics majors. They know eventually that he's forcing them to do the thinking because he wants them to own it going forward, because he cares about their high performance.
We had Urban Meyer on a few weeks back, and how he talked about how he was tough on Alex. He remembered Alex's exact weight, from freshman year, all this. But he had this thing. He's like, love is not soft. Like, love is hard. Like that is what, if you actually care, he's like, that doesn't, you have to do that. It is part of the job. And it's the same thing that this teacher said, right? Of just like, I would never deprive them of the joy that they get or the knowledge they have of learning physics. But that's like actually caring rather than like getting out of the situation,
Yeah. There's a lot of parenting research from like the 80s and 90s that were trying to argue that kids will have insecure attachment, so they won't have an attachment figure, if parents are authoritarian dictators. So it was very like anti kind of authoritarian, mean parenting. And that gave rise to a lot of the self-esteem movement that I think swung the pendulum in the opposite way, where everyone has kid gloves at all times. And but there was this one interesting finding that researchers kept trying to show that the more distress kids had, like they're crying, they're unhappy, that the worse their lives would be. But it turns out that in a lot of the best homes, kids are crying all the time. And that's because kids don't want to do the right stuff. Like, it's way easier to keep playing with Legos or knock it out of the pool or, steal 19 yogurts from the fridge like my 4-year-old did yesterday. But like, kids cry all the time in good houses because there's firm boundaries and someone's in charge. But they're not crying because the parent's humiliating them or shaming them or saying you're no good. It's just because it's legitimately hard to figure out how to be successful in our society. And the same is true in Sergio's class. Students are crying all the time. Like, I interviewed his wife, his best friend, his former students, and the students were always like, oh yeah, I cried all of September and October. But it's not because he's yelling at them like Jaime Escalante, telling them they're going to be barefoot and pregnant if you don't pass calculus. It's like, physics is legitimately hard. It's like the secrets of the physical universe were hidden from all of humanity for thousands of years. And now we ask every 17-year-old to learn it in like 6 months. Like, it's unbelievable. And he gets them to do that. So I think that this idea of your job is to protect everyone from sadness is like not right. And that's the wrong way. But it's also not your job to crush people and make them feel like shit all the time. It's to let them do legitimately hard things, experience those emotions, and help them get out on the other side super proud that they did something amazing.
To go back to the overscheduled thing, because I think every person deals with this, right? The stress. And isn't that in itself just a stress, right? Like, to go back to our reaction to the stress, right? Like, in the parenting moment, I'm super self-conscious because I think people are watching, and I'm so busy, right? Like we were talking about, like, I don't have time to have this appropriate conversation with my kid, right? But it's like this exact thing. And my wife's going to hate that I'm saying this. She has this reaction sometimes when you get stretched too thin, but everybody does. But her reaction is like, oh my God, I'm stressed. Like, like, instead of like taking the appropriate approach to it, like even that mindset change, which I guess that's just as I'm like thinking out loud here, like would let you deal with that better, right? Because we're all overbooked. Like you said, like it's like universal. We all have our stuff. And in that moment, to be able to handle that appropriately and view it as the stressor that it is.
I think part of the challenges of modern life involve the fact that things change so fast, both the labor market, technology, even our daily routines. Like, I just had to, switch from Google Play to Apple TV, and that took me 3 hours to do all the logins. It's like, it's just, there's always something that takes so much time and it's so complex. And then also there feels like there's a race of like, what are you doing for your kids and how are they measuring up? And are you doing enough? And if you're not, then are you blamed for that? And so I get that. I mean, and I get the temptation of being Thoreau and Walden and just getting rid of everything. But, at the same time, all of us have the chance to make a contribution to improving our society. And that means we got to be a part of society at some level, and you can't say goodbye to it. So this is a problem that's not really going away. And so given that, how in the world are you supposed to do mentor mindset stuff? And what I found very comforting from Lorena Seidel is the very simple idea of the do-over. And it's like, in a parenting case, you lose your mind and you are not the parent you want to be. And then you start worrying that now your kid's going to remember that forever. And now you've created toxic stress and a traumatic experience. And you've just cost yourself tens of thousands of dollars in therapy because of your momentary lapse in judgment. Right?
Yeah.
And, but then you actually get a do-over. You can be like, hey, 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later, I did not live up to the values of this family. I still need you to do that thing I need you to do, but I should have been more curious about why it was hard for you. And I should have had a conversation about, what's getting in the way. And I would just like to listen now and have a do-over. And I've started doing that. And your kids remember the do-over more than the first thing. In fact, sometimes they laugh about the first thing.
What you just said is but it's so 1000% right. Like I feel terrible when I like do the bad stuff with my kids, when I yell and scream or shout, when I do something I not on purpose, when I'm like not in control. You know what I'm saying? Like when I'm doing something that's not, with a purpose in mind and more just like emotionally driven. But what you just said is the best part about parenting is this realization of like, you still get them tomorrow. Right. And if you go to them, then they actually get to see how you react to a mistake too. Right. And they get to see that like, and I tell them all the time, like, this is my first time being a dad, like I'm trying but I made a mistake. And I hope that like what you see is like, it's not that I don't make them, it's that I like apologize and that, we're going to get through it together. And it's the same thing. Like, it's not that I don't need you to do the thing. It's just that like the style I took was so wrong. And so I love your point on the do-overs. And I find that like, if you have the mindset that I think you encourage us to have, it's almost better for them to see you make the mistake and then come back from it, because they're going to make mistakes. They're going to do stuff that they shouldn't do. And they're going to realize that even when you're 100 years old, like I am, that you still do it and you still got to react. David, this was amazing. Amazing. So helpful, so impactful. And you've done this incredible service by writing these books or writing this book and then also just talking about it and being as open as you are on, the book you needed rather than like the book that you are perfectly embodying. And it was very impacting to me, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Go get 10 to 25. Support your local bookstore. David, you're a superstar. I'm glad you answered that cold email that cold December day many years ago, and we applaud all your work and your passion for helping not only young people but old people like us too. And thank you for being the glue guy today.
Hey.